Hey, Laura, welcome to the Rain Well podcast. How are you today?
Hi, Rana. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you for inviting me to this podcast. Awesome to be
Oh,
here.
you're most welcome. I've got a big grin on my face because I've been practicing how to say your surname and not try and screw it up. So,
Did
for
it
the listeners,
perfectly.
I did it perfectly before, but now I'm actually recording. I'll screw it up. But for the listeners, I am super delighted to invite Laura Korculanin to the show. And Laura and I were introduced by actually a previous podcast guest on my show, and we both had one word that we shared in our bios, and that word was shit. Mine was getting shit done, and Laura's was all about her business, which she'll talk about in a moment, which is giving a shit. um, but Laura, I'm going to read your bio because I don't want to miss anything out, and you are an incredible human being. So, Laura really is a pioneer and a design anthropologist, environmental advocate, and a water expert. You've worked a lot in water and systemic changes in various projects all over Europe and across the world. You've worked as an invited professor at various universities across the world in sustainability programs. And of course, you've paved the way for establishing business anthropology. Um, you are also part and a design practice in Europe as part of the direction board for the Applied Anthropology Network and the curator of Impulse Sessions Designed by Nature. There is so much going on in your world and so much that you do. I know that you are now also focusing on all things water and sanitation, and hoping to start to work on a program, hopefully in Portugal. So I know that doesn't do you justice, but please welcome to the show, and please tell the listeners a little bit more that I might have missed, or what got you to the point in your career, and how you juggle so many things.
Thank you. Yeah, so reading a bio, I feel like never makes it justice because it's a long journey to get where we are today. I believe all of us, even the ones listening. And yeah, my journey started with anthropology career. I was an anthropology student, and as an anthropologist in 2009, I'm Slovenian and Croatian. I went to live to Barcelona to study there for a year, and that was kind of a hell of a year. It changed my life upside
Yeah.
down. Believe it or not, sanitation, smelling urine on the streets changed my life forever. So it's how I started to work on sanitation and water topic. As a young researcher, I was choosing a team for my master degree, and I was like, in very different areas of my interest, but always interested in built environment in the city landscape and infrastructure of the city. And that was the moment that I was like, my God, no one is speaking of this sanitation problem in the city of Barcelona. In that time, I was in Barcelona, of public lack of public toilets. And then when I start to dive into the drain and really dive down the drain of toilets, I realized, my God, this is not just a Barcelona public toilet issue. Larger cities around the world has the same issue of lacking public sanitation and so on. But that was just the beginning because that was more, let's say, a rebel spirit in me, a young researcher, always excited and full of curiosity for things that they are edgy and different, and no one speaks about them. So that was a turning point when I made the whole research on sanitation in city. In that time, focused first on Barcelona and then later on in Lisbon. I moved 2 years later to Lisbon, where I'm based now. And that was just like, let's say, in a way, beautiful research topic, interesting for a lot of people, also a crazy topic in that time, because that 2009, a beautiful girl speaking on toilets and shit was not the most attractive thing in that time. So once I finished my research and I published this research, I was like,
Mhm.
but that's not enough. I'm just like kind of fed up of talking of problems because I realized, my God, the whole world is harnessed around toilets in the city. So like the water distribution, the water treatment, the wastewater treatment, but also treatment before the delivery, the governance model of water, but also energy related to it, because of
Mm.
course we need energy to have water in cities and in toilets to flush it down the drain. And then the concerning truth of flushing down the drain drinkable, filtered, purified water was so striking for me that I said, I need to do something about it. And then in that moment, I met a special mentor, special person who was like, yeah, you need to give a shit. We were both like together, I need to give a shit around this. And that was kind of a joke. So who would say that that would become a business and a business model and something that you will do the whole life until today? But it was, yeah, it was exciting. It still is, but also certainly it was not the most straightforward way to get to the water expertise or to the water work. But it was something that it was so inherently connected that I could not ignore it. And then, yeah, to finish off here, there's a lot to say always when I get into this topic, I cannot stop. But the thing is that I was always passionate about really making true world changes and bringing the justice forward in topics they are not seen, or marginalized communities and so on, as an anthropologist. And then as I entered my PhD, and also I was a university professor in design, I started to merge this design anthropology field, as you said, the pioneering design anthropology, which is also very new out in the market. Yeah. But it was very significant because as a researcher, I understood, okay, as an anthropologist, I understand very well, holistically, systemically the problem. But as a designer, I see the huge opportunity where the solution and the strategic systemic solution can happen and should happen. Yeah. So with me or without me. So yeah, then that became a driving force for Give a Shit. And that's how it all started. And that's how it's being continued, of course, with ups and downs, and but with a lot of ups in the way what we I should be doing and what we should be doing around water.
Amazing, amazing. And listen, for people out there who might just not quite understand what is anthropology and what is design anthropology, could you just break it down a little bit and just tell us what exactly that is?
Yeah, happy to do so, because even within the field is like, what is this? But the truth is a very important and significant discipline and methodology of work. Why? Because anthropology, it's like a lot of people just right away think of like, oh, these are the people who study indigenous people on remote islands and talk like some strange languages and then come back from long travels. That's one way of the research of anthropology. But anthropology is also very, very useful method to really observe and understand cultural, behavioral differences, contextual, situational things, environmental challenges related to really the social cultural context. So for me, anthropology is an amazing tool that then when I merge it with design, and design where I use, like, first I was a lot into design thinking, which is always related to human-centered design, and that implies anthropology in it. So you need to understand what are the needs of people, what are the needs of humans, to truly bring satisfying solution forward. But after that, I realized that beyond human centricity, it's essential and the most important we put nature as the main stakeholder within our design processes and design solutions. So design anthropology in this case, for me, as my, I would say, definition, there are many, is merging problem formulation discipline or problem formulation statement around one challenge together with solution-oriented practice, with dynamic active design method, where we actually have very holistic formulation of a systemic problem, a wicked problem, which is normally very hard to address because it's so complex. When you say climate change, water crisis, how do you go about that? Yeah. So in anthropology, you map out the problem and you understand it systemically, what is the problem. And I like to call it, and then you choose acupuncture, and in my case, urban acupuncture, where you need to pin in and say, this is the starting point where we are starting to merge the design and merge the solutions oriented active design methods to bring forward solutions. So it's kind of merging the two disciplines, but at the end is one approach, one methodology, where you use the quality research and you join the creative, innovative methods to bring forward solutions. So
amazing.
I hope that was clear enough, but happy to dive deeper when needed.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Thank you so much. And I guess one of the things that we think about when we think of the world and we think of sanitation and toilets and water, of course, anything to do with toilet activities tends to either be a joke or forbidden conversation, if you don't talk about the toilet habits. But most people would look to sort of countries where they are lacking. And actually what you really realised was actually from a major global city, beautiful city, Barcelona, this lack of provision. What made you focus on the kind of more built environment cities globally than, say, going down the route of sanitation, say like Jack Sim does when he's looking at the kind of inequalities and the poverty areas?
Yeah, very good question and very good point, because of course sanitation, it's a huge worldwide problem. Almost 1/3 of the world population still lacks access to clean, adequate toilets. And that is a problem. I'm not dismissing that part of the problem. The thing is that my work started, like I said, in a city and in a built environment, and understanding how infrastructure that we are having and using is outdated and completely unsustainable. So since I'm so passionate around water, I'm like, water is for me my daily life. I really sink into research of water in all possible directions and ways. And that in that time, when I started to dive down the drain of toilets, I was like, my God, we are wasting between 3 to 7 liters of drinkable purified water in each and every flush of a toilet, minimum. Or larger toilet tanks that we in Portugal still use them in some households, it's up to 11 to 13 liters. And in the United States, there are many of this kind of toilets still. Yeah. So if you account, like in average, we go to toilets 5 times a day. It's not all around the world, but in Portugal, where I was doing my research, or in Slovenia, in average, we go to toilet 5 times a day. What that means that in every flush, you will flush down between 20 to 35, 40 liters of drinkable purified water. If you compare that water like to industrial use of water or agriculture, it seems nothing. It seems like invisible footprint. But the truth is, the consciousness of humanity starts where you can see it and when you can connect to the topic. Because once you speak of so disconnected topics, something is out there missing and lacking. People in Africa are lacking sanitation. People are dying from diarrhea, or kids are dying from diarrhea more times than from HIV, and we speak more on HIV. But when you talk of something that you can understand, now every time you go to toilet, you're flushing down your water, drinkable water, that it's not just clean, it's a living being. And in that moment, for me, my understanding became so concerning. I was like, wow, I understood the sanitation. It's a huge problem out there. But I was like, something is very wrong with our sanitation systems. If all the technological evolution, everything what's happening in our society is advancing so fast, but toilets are the design, the S-Welf design is the same for flushing for the last 240 years. So something is very wrong. And that was the moment of turning point when I said, I need to give a shit, but I need to focus on the developed world, where we think we are so developed, but truly the systems we're using, they're completely unsustainable and not supporting the future of regeneration, of future of our well-being in our society. And that was a small little trigger. And then there were many others that they were related to energy efficiency and so on in our cities. But that was,
I think all the little nods to the toilet. So like down the drain, there was a little trickle. I think they're brilliant. See how many we can keep going. But on a serious note, though, when I think about flushing 20 litres of clean water down the toilet every day, I mean, something that you feel is insignificant to water our agricultural crops globally. Do you have a figure that sort of says, roughly, this is probably what the developed flush down the toilet every single day?
To be, you mean in developed world?
Yes.
Oh, it's very hard to make statistic on developed world, because I should calculate all the countries and make the household parameters on how many toilets are in each household and so on. I don't have that figure, but in a household, I will go for Lisbon. We use in Portugal around 187 liters of water per day, and 27% of water is going down the toilet in household. So it's one of the largest devices that is using drinkable water. And from this perspective, being one of the products which is truly like using significant amount in each and every household, it's the place for intervention, and especially in the areas where there is no drinkable water, because or no drinkable water, where water scarcity is real and water scarcity is already present, like in Portugal, and water droughts are something that it's foreseen for our future. So it's not something, it's already here, but it's going to happen eventually more and more often, unfortunately. So we need to have strategies and on this paradigm shift on how we govern our water and how we use it.
Brilliant. So I love the fact that in your description between study, but then actually what are the solutions? Let's think about that and say, okay, if we're going to help Lisbon to transition, we both know that anything that's been the same for 200 years has obviously got a long history of infrastructure that's going to be an absolute nightmare to change. So it's kind of, it kind of works. It flushes toilets, we've got bigger fish to fry.
I agree.
But let's not bother. Yeah. And there is probably going to be an element of that. But as the water scarcity dials up, what solutions can we look at in a built environment to change this?
Yeah, you're making a very good point, because an old infrastructure, old cities, or let's say infrastructures in place, it's very hard to change for many reasons, not just because of technology itself, but you need the whole infrastructure around it, the distribution system, the treatment system, how do you manage the resources that they are flushing the toilets if it's not drinkable water, and so on. So I do agree on this one, that this is a challenging topic, but the first step in the work I'm doing and what my old PhD is about and where the Give a Shit is focused right now, it's truly into the new infrastructures. We are talking a lot about smart cities. We are talking a lot about new buildings, new environments, zero waste buildings. We are mainly focusing on energy efficiency and carbon offsetting. But do you ever hear speaking on water codes and saying like these buildings should be 100% water efficient? So that's a question mark, but also to follow up your question and answer is, no, we don't look into that subjects yet, because I would say water is not enough sexy and water is not enough present in our lobbying system. Unfortunately, it's not something that, and it should not be something that should be just promoted as a valuable resource economically. But what I'm looking at and what we are looking at, it's integrated water solutions. So what that means, because when I speak on toilets, and we started the conversation with toilets, and people are like, okay, this talk will go around toilets, maybe I don't want to know more. It's enough of a taboo topic, but the truth is the toilet is just the part of the whole skeleton of a city. So for me, my interest was like, okay, that if you look into the toilet, how it's connected to the whole water distribution, it's so interesting, because the new buildings should, by regulation and by the infrastructure lobby and everything, how we are building, have the systems and an ecosystem model which would be supporting the water water reusage, fixing the water locally. So that means all the water that falls in the place locally on your rooftop, that we don't have water runoffs and so on, that should be stored. Rainwater collector stations, water filtration systems, reusage of water. If we are near a seaside, reusing also desalinated water, possibly in flushing. And so on and so on. So when you have this kind of regulation in place, when you have this kind of conversations on the table, when you know that that's what you need to do, then the toilet is just one of the products you will place to reduce the water use, or you will have an alternative water in flushing of toilet, or you will have waterless toilets, which are not, which can be highly technological, like vacuum cleaning toilets or so on. So the whole thing on the future, I believe it's really looking into the integrated models where the whole system, whole building is harnessing water, it's collecting water, is reusing water, and it's further distributing water between the community, and then also bringing back ownership to water in community. Because right now we never think of water, where does it come from, how it's being treated, what happened next when I flush the toilet. You never, like, do you really think ever when you flush the toilet where it goes?
Well, unless you live in England, and we know that wonderful privatized water companies flush half of that, as we know, as we said, shit into our oceans. So sadly, here in the UK, we're getting more and more aware of what happens, where does it end up when we're paying hundreds of pounds individually as families to have this water treated, and actually it's just dumped into our oceans and our rivers. So it's becoming a much bigger topic, for sure, around that.
Reason. Yeah, absolutely. Additional reason to look at it into deeper and to bring back ownership over it also to people. So this is also, the privatization is the next very, very concerning topic to talk on water. But I would say, because I just didn't want to finish explaining the vision of solution, and vision, it's not just a vision, it's something that it's technologically existing and achievable. It's just how do we set up infrastructures and next cities that we are building, because every day we are building new buildings. So it's like, well, why don't we put new building codes in the places we are building? It's also connected to energy. There is where I wanted just to merge, and there is where we give a shit. We were also looking into the toilets, water and energy nexus, because when you flush the toilet, you're not just flushing the water, you're also flushing energy resources, potential renewable energy resources, because human feces are have high potential of being transformed into energy, into electricity, hydrogen fuel. We can even extract fine metals out of them, because everything what comes to our body goes to our filtration station bowel and comes out in excreta. So it's a very important place to look at, that we are not just wasting water, but we are wasting precious resources, which could potentially be reused in the same building system. And we could have the whole circular economy around it, also plugged in eventually in the smart cities and blockchain, and really understanding ownership over our resources. And
you know what? When you talk about it, it's like, I remember first when I was reading about the use of human excrement on as fertilizer, and I was like, are you really? And then when I thought about it and read more and more, and I remember watching a little clip of someone, it was a chef, and he was eating food that had been grown using human feces fertilizer, but it was just the stigma over it. But for somehow it's okay that we put horse manure or cow manure or all sorts of bone, and and somehow we're okay with that. But the moment we mention it's human, it is just one of those silly things that we need to just get over, because it's natural. We put it through our bodies and it comes out of our bodies, and we can use it for good.
Absolute yes, and absolutely something we need to remember from the past, because the truth is our ancestors were doing that. There is, of course, a concerning, let's say, a concerning truth on excrements is that, of course, everything, as I said, we filter within our body ends up in our bowel and our excreta. It means that it also, like chemicals that we use in environments, if this is like cosmetics you use that they are not natural, they will be in feces or other kind of chemicals, or in food if food is not fully organic and so on. So with antibiotics and so on, they can be, or even drugs. There is a lot of research in cities on how much drugs is being used in each city, because they can monitorize that on the wastewater treatment system. That's all true. The truth is that with existing technologies that they are out there, and also with the composting stations, that they are possibly, let's say, reducing the risk that this is very doable, especially in the side of the urine, because if you have a separating station of urine and feces, urine has, 98% of pathogens will go to excreta, to feces, to the solid part. So it means that the urine, and that's highly contagious.
Mostly.
But urine, it's very clean, and there is a lot of, like, I think maybe you saw the beer, like also in Lisbon wastewater treatment systems, they use the water that they reproduce in the beer production and so on, and they use it for promoting it, how valuable it is, this resource, how undamaging it is, and so on and so on. The same for fertilizing station with where they have, like, I know in France they had this nice, let's say, pissoirs where you could urinals where you could go to toilet in the public space, but you would fertilize flowers directly. So it right away brings the awareness that that's something valuable. On the other side, from Jerusalem, Greece, Rome, Egypt, everywhere the feces were fertilizing not just lands and soils, but also ponds and waters for growing fish faster. So that was very known. And so this kind of things, of course, there is a lot of discussion on taboo around it. There is a lot of discussion on what to do with highly contaminated things in the urine, but technologically speaking, things are possible. There are companies out there like Compotoi, they're already doing the fertilizer, the reusing the biosolid part. Moss and Sanitation doing the same in Guatemala. Compotoi, they are even in Switzerland and showcasing that in Zurich, in the city. So it's not something so distant and something that it's not doable. The question is only how do we make this scalable, and how do we really integrate this something as normalized practice in our daily life and in our cultures. And especially speaking, in such low quality of our soils today, and chemical fertilizers we are using, and also lack of them in the moment when the Ukrainian war started. So there is for sure something having huge potency to look into feces for fertilizing. But that's just one byproduct.
Exactly. And then that goes all the way back round to whatever we put in on the land is then going into our waters. So is it better to put in our feces that might have a level of contamination versus something that's a continual chemical fertilizer? For example, I saw a great guy in Africa who was essentially collecting feces and then storing it and kind of drying it out and then using it as a biomass, using it as a fuel. So stopping the locals going into the woods and chopping down trees, or using charcoal, etc. So the added saying that any waste is someone's way to produce a product or make money, I think's incredibly powerful. And listen, I guess we are 70% water, right? So as humans and as the planet, with roughly about 70% blue. We are a blue planet, not a green planet. So it amazes me that there isn't more focus on this. And as we're seeing, at the moment with extreme downpours of water, be that Libya, Greece, Bulgaria, and then the opposite where we've got droughts, for me, water feels like it's going to be the next gold. It's like it is going to be hugely critical.
It is indeed. It's not something it's going to be just because it's appearing as such. We will have such water catastrophes, which are already showcasing, and in different areas of the world, that we will absolutely need to look into this very deeply and restructure the water governance and water management models differently. Mm-hmm. But I would say the main problem from my long years research and my deep frustration, I would say, and deep frustration brought forward, let's give a shit, because we need to give a shit on the topic. But then it really comes back to the relationship with water, with human relationship with water. So also as an anthropologist, I was always very interested to study indigenous wisdom, traditional knowledge, and how they reuse water, how they relate to water, what is the main difference, what went so wrong that water is a commodity today. So the main thing that when we look into relationship into water, there is a true disconnection, not just with water in general, with nature. But I do really believe that there is a huge gap between understanding with water and working with water. It's not just about bringing forward technology of water and infrastructures. It's understanding that we are truly dealing with a vital resource. As you said, once we are born almost from, our body is made almost from 74% of water. Also, the womb where we are for 9 months, so how we come to the planet Earth is through the water. And then right now, probably we have some 63 to 67% of water in us. So that's a huge amount. And do we really think about it? I believe mainly not. And that's the first step to understanding the water as a vital resource, not just for drinking and eating and our survival, but truly like that's something existential. Without water, we don't exist. So it's like bringing different kind of optics and understanding of water as a living being. And there is also a lot of studies right now to bring this indigenous wisdom back to the water governance and water policies. There are a lot of efforts made because the communal water management, it's a huge thing. And ownership over water back to communities is a huge thing. Why? Because once you have, let's say, if we look into the energy sector and we have the brilliant case studies with superblocks. And superblocks are like this neighborhood, which are units. They are neighborhoods, but they're like managing the food, transportation, energy, and also looking into the water management themselves.
Right.
And one of the big case studies in Barcelona. And in this case, it's so essential to look also into ownership of resources and who is governing the resources. It's not just distribution system of government that brings water to you or energy. It's also understanding that you are part of the water governance and you should take part of the ownership of how do you relate and how do you use water and how do you reduce the waste of it, or there should be no waste. So that's the whole point. And so this connection from water resources is a big thing. And for me, because I worked with different stakeholders, I held many workshops, facilitated many conversations on water topics, on future on water, and so on. And the main thing was wow, we really don't understand water. We don't sit with water. Water carries memory. Water is technology. Water is scientifically, we know it's a lot more than just a resource to give us life. It's truly magnificent transportation technological system, which is a lot. And I believe being with water, understanding water is a whole new chapter in understanding how do we reframe existing model, existing paradigm, and the water governance and the water policy needs to be a big needs to play a big role in it, for sure.
And I think that leads very nicely. Like at the moment, like next door to me, for example, they completely knocked down their house and they're building an eco home. And as part of that, or as eco as they can get it, as part of that, they've got a huge rainwater collection tank that's going to be buried under the ground, and that will be used for, the dishwasher, the washing machine, the toilets, etc. But as they start to build that, and they have heat source pump, they've got solar panels, even though they are going to effectively be self-sufficient, the infrastructure that we have here won't allow them to be independent and won't allow them to go off grid because they're going to lose money. So still, there's certain loopholes where they've got to do the water fee, they've got to do the electricity fee, and all of these things where you're like, but they don't need any of that. So of course, we're always facing that around the battle of making money from it and privatization. And so I don't know what it's like in Lisbon, but as we spoke earlier, here, suddenly now they've been caught out with what they've been doing and they want to add millions to mine and everybody else's water bill. because they've been getting away with it for 10, 20, 30 years. And, you know, kind of ruining the waterways. So even though we can show that exponentially they've been paying shareholders, you know, millions of pounds every year and not looking at the infrastructure. So I mean, that's always going to be a really tough battle for us, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's a big challenging topic also for the work I'm doing, and it's I actually paused right now my PhD and research around water governance and creating an action plans and guidelines on how to implement new water governance within the city scale, and especially within the new buildings, as we were talking. So yeah, it's a huge battle, especially because
why have you paused it? What's made you pause this work?
Two things, I would say. Too many things on the plate, and on the other side, lack of financing. Because yeah, I was self-financing my PhD and also like doing a lot of research and extra work around water. So to really do this properly and to publish it, because for me it doesn't have any validity if it's just written and stays in a library. I really want to make it a proper policy guidance paper. For that, I need funding.
And so, for example, when I look at, I interviewed lots of different people and doing lots of different, you know, expertise and areas. Why isn't someone like the government in Lisbon? Why aren't there global institutions going, here's a lady, individual, absolutely knows what she's talking about? Why isn't there the funding there?
I would say, yeah, I did not apply for scholarships when it was time because I was a professor in that time. And then, of course, I extended it many years when I should finish it. And yeah, there is lack of funding on water in general. And one of these things was I never searched for funds directly in this way with them, but every time I would address the topic on water for funding or whatever, it was always very difficult and challenging. No, actually we did, excuse me. I'm even having a collaboration with UN Habitat in place, and they would be ready to publish the paper on policy guidance for water stressed areas. And we did address together City Hall of Lisbon and one other private company, and there was no funding supposedly for that, or no interest to fund that kind of research. So yeah, that's so far, but I believe, you know, future is bright. I believe this work needs to be done without me or with me. Just to make like one maybe remark I didn't say before, from 100% of water arriving to our households in Portugal, 90% of water is wasted in undrinkable purposes. So only 10% of water we use in drinking. So if this is not something to write a policy guidance around, then I don't know what. It's like we need to think what do we do with that 90% of water which is being scarce, but flushed down the drain and used in undrinkable purposes. And then only 10% is really for drinkable purposes. So this paradigm and on how are we managing it and how we are using it absolutely needs to change.
So there's two call outs for me. One, for anyone listening who just thinks, right, what can I do better at home? I think we probably know, use the short flush. We probably know, don't run the tap while you're brushing your teeth. But what more can we do at home? You know, shorter showers, things like that. But then for people listening who have got access to funds and who do know, quite frankly, that we need government policies and procedures around governance and water protection now and in the future, what would you say to those people as well?
Okay, so first on small tips and tricks, I would say. We didn't speak anything on technology and the relationship of technology footprint and water, but there is a huge gap between that too. I would say one thing on toilet that a lot of people don't know. If you can place a drinkable, not necessarily drinkable, but a plastic bottle in your toilet tank. If you have a toilet tank that you can open it and place the bottle inside of it, you will already reduce each and every flush for 1.5 liters. So that's already something small, but truly a big thing that you can do yourself.
Is that water? Sorry, I love this. Is that water bottle a full water bottle?
Yeah, just fill up your water bottle, and it's heavy, and you place it in a toilet tank, you close it, and that's going to every time the toilet tank will be filling up, it will use less water already in filling up and in flushing. So that's a small thing, a trick. Then going back to technology in water. So with every 25 to 30 sentences on ChatGPT, we are using half a liter of drinkable water to cool down the servers and to cool down the distribution of the energy and so on. So using less devices or using them in a more smart way, I wouldn't say don't use technology, because I'm the first one to say technology is needed and technology is future. But for sure, using it in smarter way, it's very important. What kind of background on your phone you are using, black or white, how did that already reduce not just energy footprint, but also water footprint. So smart things like this. Then eating food locally. It's not about only organic and local food, and this is a trend, and we know that for some people it's unfortunately too pricey and so on, but eating locally, buying locally, whatever you buy, even clothes or whatever produce, it means you're wasting less water in the whole distribution chain. Cycle. So it's very important, this fix locally, buy locally, stay focused locally, but think globally. Locality, it's a big thing. And then and then the second part was what would be your call to action for those that do know that this needs to be, this PhD needs to be finished. People like you and your industry and your expertise needs to be paid to bring this governance to the forefront, to allow for systemic change to happen. So my call to action, it's very personal, but it's very global. It's truly taking care of water. It's truly taking care of future generations to come. It's to help me support the funding of writing a blueprint, which is part of my academic research, which will be published as action plan and policy guidance for water-stressed areas, and eventually plugged into smart cities. So with concrete guidelines on how to develop, implement new technologies and create new governance model where all stakeholders enter the play and the water governance system. So that's an action to call, and also speak up more on this topic, make place that this topic can be visible, seen, and understood by the ones that they can make changes, and by all of us to step together to use water more wisely, more consciously, and that we are really stepping together as humanity into water conservation and respect, paying the reverence back to the resource that actually brought us here. So
amazing. And I think that probably is the perfect place to end. Laura, thank you so much. It's made me think about a few little things. It's made me think about, when I think of supply chains, I don't always think about water in those supply chains unless it was fashion, for example, or drinks. So I think that's been really valuable. I think the more we can talk about shit, give a shit, or get shit done, I think it's really, really important that we talk about these things and we allow experts like yourselves who are really passionate about this to flourish, and allow the work to be completed and disseminated and argued against and all of those things, but at least to be out there and done. So thank you so much, Laura. I really, really appreciated your time.
Thank you so much, Rona. Thank you for inviting me. And it's always such a pleasure to speak on this topic. Really makes my heart sink, and also makes me feel like, oh my God, we need to do more and we need to do what's in our hands. So I'm thankful you're making this visible, that we can collaborate and speak more on this topic, that it's essential to our future. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're most welcome. Thank you, Laura. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So that's it. You've made it. The show's over. Thank you for being with us. I hope you've been able to take something away, maybe solve a problem, or just know you're not alone. Here's hoping it made you smile with a few laughs along the way. Please feel free to find me on all social media channels, and you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. Just search the Rona Morel podcast. Have an awesome day and see you next time.